Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi. The Poonch Attack, something that we need to look at beyond the tactical attack that actually took place on the ground. Although very sad, let me say that right at the beginning, and my heart goes out to the families of the men that have lost their lives in the line of duty. Having said that, we need to again understand what's happened here. Is this a new phase of Kashmir that we are not paying too much attention to, at least in the public domain, at least in the media? To discuss this, I have with me Lieutenant General Syed Hasnain, the man who would know quite a bit about this and who would help us understand what are the larger significance of these kind of activities in Kashmir. Sir, thank you so much for joining in and hello.
Jai Hind to all our viewers.
So, firstly, let's leave the attack for a minute. I want to ask you a particular question right at the minute. Have we started ignoring Pakistan a bit too much, or point one? And have we started taking Pakistan to be the joke that we'd like it to be a bit too much?
Very interesting point to start with, Adi. It reminds me of the 70s and the 80s when we were obsessed with Pakistan. We were obsessed even till recently. And how we ignored what was happening on the northern borders. Uh, no one looked at what's happening in Tawang. I can tell you an example of the army. No one wanted to command a brigade in Tawang or command a brigade in Sikkim because the happening place was all Kashmir. It was all the Western Front, right? And if you were looking for career growth, then you always looked for action in these areas, right? So that is how the focus of the army was. That's how the focus of national security was. That's where the focus of the national media was. Unfortunately, maybe fortunately, from 2005 or so, things started changing. And you suddenly found the focus going on to northern borders. And everyone started talking of northern borders. And I again classify, give the example of the army. Everyone started looking for formations which are on the LAC, looking at Sikkim, looking at Ladakh, looking at Tawang and places like that. These were the happening places suddenly. A balance came around about 2012-13. But then 2000s, maybe 18, 19 on 2019 particularly, after the famous 5th of August decisions, a kind of a perception seems to have gone down in the public, fueled largely by the Indian media, that Pakistan is behind us. Kashmir is behind us. The problem has been resolved forever. And I think, one of those people, and there are a couple of other writers, analysts, who have been saying all along, Pakistan has not vanished. It has not vaporized. It's very much there. The intent is still there. Everything is there. All this can come back. You have to ensure that you create the conditions to ensure nothing comes back again. Unfortunately, that has not happened. And, we have ignored Pakistan to a very great extent in our minds, not the government. I won't say the government is ignored. It is the media, the public, which and the intellectual community, the strategic community, which has gone berserk on the issue of China. Of course, India with this now international footprint and the fact that under Mr. Modi, it has got itself this kind of a stature, higher stature. Everyone is tending to look internationally. Most of the seminars I myself organize or sponsor look at different conflict zones of the world, etc. We don't look so closely at Kashmir any longer. We do not look at areas along the LOC any longer, etc. And that is to the detriment of our interests, because nothing really has changed as far as the intent is concerned. And I think the very profound word sent to me by a friend in the morning: a low intensity conflict does not go away until it goes away. You see, that it remains there because you imagine in your mind it has gone away. But it's still there very much, because LIC doesn't just vanish in thin air. There's no defeat and victory which can be qualified, classified. This is the problem in our thinking.
That's an interesting, opening comments, I must say, because I personally find when I asked you this as a question as well, that we've created a joke of Pakistan rather than actually understanding the nuances of Pakistan, because it's a dangerous country, whatever said and done. Uh, it's right on the brink of a disaster, and of course it would like to export the disaster. So that's another threat that we sit on.
We have mood swings. You see, unfortunately, this is the problem. Mood swings take place with us. And we look at Pakistan one day as an evil genie, a huge genie in front of us. And many times we imagine that it is non existent and that we can sort of just push it aside. We have to remember that it is there. And given its size, much smaller, but yet 200 million people, a reasonable economy, not something which can be ignored. An army of 6.5 lakhs, 650,000. I mean, sizable tank corps, sizable air force, and professional to that extent. How can you ignore that country? And therefore, somewhere in our strategic calculus, we have to come out with this balance of looking at South Asian security by keeping both sides, the LAC and the LOC, on balance.
Indeed, I think that's something that a realization needs to come in. Of course, if I may ask you, sir, would this realization really help in preventing these kind of attacks? Because, as you said, a low intensity combat or a intensity conflict doesn't really end till it does. So these kind of attacks, although reprehensible is probably a lighter word in my dictionary, uh,
I,
but they
I
would
may be,
still happen.
I may be wrong, Adi. One is not on the ground, and one was only dependent upon reports from sources, friends, discussions, etc. But I don't think one can be completely off the mark. Fact remains that this area in the Bimbergali Poonch Road, this area of Rajouri, Poonch, the tracks in the Pir Panjal with famous place called Hill Kaka, is an area which has now seen more than a share of incidents in the last 2 years. And frankly saying, we have not been able to get rid of this groups or the groups which exist here. This is close to the line of control. People, infiltrators can come in, strike, and go back, or they can even reside in the Hilkaka tracts, and you will never be able to find them for months. It is this area which needs intense security. The problem is that there is no active insurgency, active militancy or terror here, in the sense that it's not an over a period of time complacency sets in. It's a human tendency. Can't help it. But to start reducing the resources at any stage, I think is fraught with danger. The resources, you have to determine what is the minimum resources which are required. The history of this area is that it was very, very active, almost on the same lines as the valley uh, in the early part of the millennium. In fact, it was worse than the valley at times. And then slowly we brought in formations from the Eastern Command, and we defeated terror here to a great extent. We had an operation here called Sarp Vinash in 2003, led by a very famous General Hadi leader, the Romeo Force, and very successful operation in the same area. We killed very large number of terrorists in that area at that time. Thereafter, over a period of time, the intensity of operations faded, the number of incidents reduced, and we started reducing the forces here. Done. No objections to that. Eastern Command formations went back, they couldn't remain here permanently. Then, of course, after 2020, after the famous incidents in Galwan, we started, we had to push formations up into Ladakh. And so the strength started getting, had to be taken from somewhere. It had to get, this was the place which was found. And from here, generally, that is south of Pir Panjal, forces were sent up, further reducing the grid. Obviously, there are people on the other side who are observing all this. They are observing it. Every single move which is made by the army or the police forces is observed. And if I was sitting there, I would also make the same conclusions. Here is a weakening taking place. Don't concentrate on Srinagar. Don't concentrate on Kashmir. Don't look at Kupwara, Udi, and well known places like that. Look at these places. Strike here. Now, you saw first, 2nd of the January this year, strike in Rajouri, where 7 civilians were killed. Not been resolved in long. Even the Home Minister visited that place, I remember. It was that important, considered that important. And now you've had this. Year and a half ago, you had an incident in this area where one of my regimental units got struck. And they were involved in intense search operations. Nothing came out of it. But that time also, in conjunction with minority killings in the valley, a message was being sent that, see, we can push up the ante anytime we wish to. That's the message which is being conveyed to us by such actions. That you may think this war has come to an end, this proxy war. Think again. Look at Twitter. Twitter also, all kinds of pseudonym handles are messaging me, messaging Major Gaurav Arya and people like that, and telling us, think again, right? We are still here. We can do a lot of things. These are all ISI handles, most of them, which are pushing out these kind of messages. So at the end of the day, the conclusion is, it's a difficult call for the government, a very difficult call for the army, but somehow ways have to be found by which more balance has to be maintained in the deployment patterns.
Indeed, there's just no alternative for good coverage. So uh, it's hardly debatable, sir. Sir, but let's get into this particular attack. I don't like discussing politics on my channel at all, sir. But there is a funny narrative which is being spread around the place that why can't the army be transported by air? To that, my only thought is that this is a land army. If the army starts flying, who's going to hold the land?
I can see the context to which you are referring in the statement. I mentioned this in my article also, very, very obliquely at one place. As far as this incident is concerned, of course, it's a no go because you
This or
see,
any other one, sir, for that matter. I
yeah,
mean,
you see, remember, most people think that the army's movement in Kashmir or in this part of south of Pir Panjal must be 5, 6, 10 vehicles moving at some time on a given day, right? I remember with General Panag when he was the army commander, Northern Command, and one day asked this question from his staff: how many people of Northern Command are on the road traveling at any time every day? Very, very interesting question. And straight away, the brigadier in charge logistics, operation logistics, came out and said, so upward of 12,000. 12,000 people are on the road every day. And there must be 1,000 vehicles or more on the move. Not many people know that in Kashmir, 10 convoys run every day. You can't maintain the army without 10 convoys. The convoys go to Ladakh from here, from this route. The whole of Lima sector is maintained by this. Kupwara, Udi, Gulmarg, Gurez, all have separate convoys. And then there's the mother convoy from Srinagar to Jammu and Jammu to Srinagar. Right? Then there is um, uh, to add to this are the CAPF convoys, a BSF convoy, a CRPF convoy. Now, let's find the air resources to transport this entire thing. Okay, let's assume all personnel are sent by air. What about the material? We have got tonnages coming in for our winter stocking every day. So these tonnages will come without any protection. You have to have manpower to protect all that convoy which is coming in. So ammunition has to come in, right? All kinds of things have to. I mean, an army survives on movement, on logistics. And to wish it away by saying you send them by air, it's the simplest of things. Air travel was introduced sometime maybe in 98, 99, if I'm not mistaken. I was still there at that time as a colonel. And as a motivation, morale factor. One person got a chance maybe in 1 year or 2 years maybe to travel by a commercial aircraft free of cost, which was a chartered aircraft from Delhi to from Srinagar to Delhi or from Srinagar to Jammu. The Air Force, of course, had its couriers running. I've been having couriers running for many years, but that is also more a motivational thing. People coming on leave, short leave, particularly for casual leave. Annual leave, no one is permitted to use a courier. So this notion somehow seems to have got hijacked. That air travel is something that can ensure the safety of the grid in an LIC area such as Kashmir. I think that's a fallacy. You have to understand the ground situation to understand. I don't want to be quoted on this tomorrow, but in the sense that this is practical experience which is speaking. And telling, I mean, this is the truth. You ask any soldier, any officer who has served in these areas, not here, in the Northeast also. Today it's wonderful to see that some people can come away on a charter from Imphal, from Dimapur, and places like that. Right now, I mean, far away places, not connected, connected by rail. Yes, Dimapur is connected by rail, but to reach a place like Imphal or other places, it's a very long, circuitous route, railway route, and then followed by convoys, etc. And I guess tired by the time. It's 7 days of travel.
Yeah.
If you want to start from base camp of Siachen and travel down to Puthango, travel home, it will take you 8 to 9 days sometimes. So it is to overcome this kind of a thing that charters were introduced, etc. Now it's become everyone is demanding that all travel be by air. India will have to find lots of air resources before we can come to that kind of a situation.
Absolutely, sir. So now I'd like to actually discuss the strategic importance and the strategic implications of this particular attack. It's a little weird that we sent an invite to Mr. Bhutto, Bilawal Bhutto, about 3 months ago, and the acceptance comes, and within less than a day that this attack happens. Uh, it is very reminiscent of the earlier system in Pakistan, that whenever there's a civilian interaction supposed to happen, although there's no interaction planned between both the countries, there is something that actually takes place to create a certain amount of tension. Would you agree that this is something like that? And what are the further strategic ramifications for this particular attack, sir?
See, Pakistan is a very complex country, as we all understand. There are groups within groups. There's a deep state, and there's a deep state within a deep state. So,
Yeah.
at any time, there are different interest groups playing against each other. So, while on one hand, they may be attempting to showcase to the world that Pakistan is above board, and see, we are participating in international meetings and platforms. Uh, we are very much in the interest of peace in South Asia. We are, as members of SCO, very cooperative. That message is going out with this very, very difficult status of economy at the moment. Pakistan is trying to send home messages to the world on of its positivity towards everything, so that it can draw in a lot of fundings, etc., which is wanting to do. Otherwise, the IMF and organizations like this are not going to come on board to provide it the fund. And at the same time, working within Pakistan are these other interest groups. Now, India cannot look at each group and its interests. We have to look at
Yeah.
Pakistan as an entity. One government, one Pakistan. Right? That's to the interest of Pakistan itself, that India should be looking like that, at one Pakistan and one group entity within Pakistan. We can't say that Pakistan can't tell us that, sorry, see, we are sending our foreign minister, but we have no control over our own renegades at home who are carrying out this kind of an activity. If they admit at all that this activity is a part of the renegade activity from Pakistan. So the problem, this is a problem which causes a foreign policy dilemma for India. If you remember this issue, I mean, the most classic example of this is the 19th of March incident, 19th of March 2020, when Chitti Singhpura took place. That killing of 36 Sikhs in this village called Chitti Singhpura near Anandabad. I was very much the Colonel GS of that formation when it happened at that time. And it happened on the night before Mr. Bill Clinton's address to the Parliament of India. That was strategic messaging. See our capability. We are capable of doing this on a day when Bill Clinton is addressing the Indian Parliament. That is what the Lashkar-e-Toiba, Jamaat-ul-Dawa, as it's called today, wanted to tell the world and also tell its own sponsors in Pakistan. This is the kind of moral victory we have been able to achieve. Right. So these important days, these important meetings, these important platforms are all occasions on which offer the opportunity to these renegade groups to do this kind of thing. And Pakistan turns a blind eye to it. It's considered virtually sponsors this kind of a thing, and then expects that India will look upon the situation as not having the hand of Pakistan. Non-state actors. There are no non-state actors. These are all state actors, very much. Because you have supported them. You have allowed them to have full-scale, territories in places like Muridke and Bahawalpur, where you train people. You have your economy going through. The economy of many of these groups is sponsored through what is happening inside these compounds in these areas. If Pakistan wishes, all this can be done away with. All of it can be done away with. But it chose to create this progressively over a period of time, from 1977 onwards, when it commenced this famous Zia doctrine of weaponizing ideology, using human resources, and sponsoring a proxy war in India. We have contained that proxy war to a great extent. Success of this government also very large. The 5th of August decisions in 2019, lots have been achieved. We've reduced the strength from 3,000-4,000 terrorists down to less than 150 today in places. But the potential for a return always remains. And it is these incidents like the one which has happened on the Poonch Road, which triggers among those who wish to see this continue to happen. I've written somewhere also that separatism, we can imagine that our outreach to the people in Jammu and Kashmir has helped. Yes, it has helped. Tremendous. We've done a good job. Our agencies are doing well. Lots and lots of people have worked very hard on it. But this is not something which can happen, change in 3 to 4 years. It will need generational change, right? And therefore, there are too many people sitting on the cusp today, the gray zone, this side or that side, right? Still affected by ideology, still affected by religion and things like that. Not owing total loyalty and integrity towards our nation. So, till that situation exists, we have to remain careful. And by remaining careful really essentially means we have to ensure that our all security measures which are required are taken at all times. And the last word on this is one great challenge to remain alert 24/7, 365. Very, very difficult.
There
And
is no.
that is the thing which is taken advantage of
Yeah, yeah.
by a wily a observant adversary who knows what are the times when your guard is down.
A lot of people would say that. But firstly, sir, let me just say this, that the whole idea that you brought out with regards to the strategic importance of this thing is going to be highlighted even further with Bilawal Bhutto's visit with regards to the SEO and stuff like that. I mean, it puts us in a conundrum, if I may. Damned if you do, damned if you don't, and that's something which is very interesting, which India is not faced for a while. I'm sure there are loads of people thinking about how to kind of turn this into our advantage, but at this moment, without a response coming across, because the response will take time. Of course, there's a lot of pluses and minuses that needs to be done, but at this moment when we are speaking, uh, it's a little bit of a tilt into the Pakistani favor. Would you agree to that, sir?
Uh, Not entirely. I would say, see, India's handling of our diplomacy has come of age. There's
Yeah.
no doubt. Doing it well. Our international capability has improved tremendously. Uh, it's only that we may not have thought through this entire aspect of the SEO summit. Although it's too premature to even say that also, because I personally feel someone like Mr. Bhutto landing up in Goa and then speaking out of turn something to the media on Indian soil, bringing out the issue of Kashmir here is something which is going to be very, 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 very awkward. It will give the opportunity to them to be able to say, see, Bharat mein jaakar wahi bola. I just wonder how are we going to handle that kind of a thing. I'm sure I'm sure our Minister of Foreign Affairs is very, very uh, conversant with these ways. He's a past master in all this. He must have already thought about all this. But this is something which just comes up in the mind. We can't treat this with kid gloves, right? And I don't think the Pakistanis are going to themselves withdraw because of this incident or because they feel that India is not welcoming them without a formal India and disinvitation from India. I don't think Bilawal Bhutto is going to stand back and say, I'm not going. Because if I was in his position, I would definitely go. I would definitely go and put India into all kinds of dilemma, right? Uh, that should be his intent, I suppose. Also, we have to think this through much more. We have to think this through much more. No one knows what is the legal status as far as the SEO is concerned. Can we chairing the SEO at the moment this year as the host country? Can we deny another country attendance at the summit at the foreign minister summit? No one has been able to give answers to this so far. So I think it's still this whole thing is still being made out. Probably the next 4 5 days will tell us what exactly how things are going to pan out. But I do think that things are going to go on. We will have the summit as it is with the
Right.
presence of Mr. Bilawal Bhutto. And the important thing is going to be that we have to ensure that there is no incident anywhere which is going to draw negativity. At the same time, while the SCO summit is on, you have a negative incident somewhere in J&K. The two put together will be not something in our overall interest.
Indeed, and that's what these guys would be looking at. I mean, try and create some sort
Exactly.
of a tamasha somewhere, bring the whole question into limelight once again, sir. So, my last question to you, and this is something I think a whole lot of people have been clamoring about, is that what will be the response of India? Of course, there'll be a diplomatic response, and the second question is there going to be a military or any other conventional response that India would give? There is a lot of people are citing the report written by the United States intelligence, which says that India will not tolerate anything like this. any further. Uh, I personally feel, and I'd just like to put this out there, that the response has to be at the time and place of our choosing when we have a certain advantage. What would that advantage be, and what do you think would be the response?
Adi, first of all, this situation is, or this question is such so critical and so sensitive that anything one says puts pressure on the government of India. And that is something that we don't want to do.
Yeah,
The government of India should be left free to
free.
carry out its actions without any encumbrances on it. This is a time I would particularly say the opposition should hold back, the media should hold back, analysts like us, all of us as a strategic community, must refrain, hold our words, so that the government of India can take the best decision. And it will take the
Right.
best decision, right? But having said that, I mean, food for thought. Is a military response the only response? You see, but someone came to me yesterday on social media, and I had to tell them that, look here, why do you expect a military response every time? This is a hybrid war, right? There can be a military action against us, but a non-military action on the other side. There can be a non-military action and a military action by us. I mean, this in hybrid situations, both things are valid. For example, Pakistan is down and out today economically. What can we have? Are we looking at a cyber capability against Pakistan? Are we looking at paralyzing its energy and irrigation networks? Are we looking at how to hit its economy in different ways to make sure that that $1.1 billion is looking for from IMF never comes its way?
Exactly.
I'm sure our diplomats, our leadership is looking at all these things. Notwithstanding that, a military option is something which must always be kept ready when you are in a state of virtual war, that as we are in case of Pakistan. And I think Air Chief Marshal Chaudhry the other day said this, the Air Chief said this, that, there is ample space below the nuclear and the conventional in which a response can be undertaken. I fully agree with him. There is enough space. And the first time it was a sub tactical, virtually level surgical, which went into a short distance. Then it went up much higher to a Balakot strike, which was an Air Force led operation. Tomorrow it could be anything else. I don't want to give ideas to anyone, but it can be anything. And missile strike, it could be this or that or anything like that. I mean, there are thousands of ideas in the mind,
Yeah, yeah,
which
yeah.
one would not like to discuss. But covert, why not covert? And then someone will quote tomorrow in Pakistan to say that both of us were talking about covert operations inside Pakistan, and that is the reason why all these activities are happening inside Pakistan.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. So they say, see, the Indian ex-corps commander talking about covert activities and this, that, and they will start quoting us. Good enough. We don't mind being quoted at all. But covert is the other answer. You don't have to take ownership of everything that you do. And one has to convey that two can play this game. If you can be in the state of deniability, if you use denial as a weapon, so can we. And I can assure you, we have done it in the past, and we've done it quite effectively. There is nothing to hold us back. We can do it all over again, anytime.
So I must say, if you would have given a certain hint to the Pakistanis, I'm sure it would have been a more tactical thing. This one is a bit more scary. What you just said with regards to the answer. So, because you've left nothing out of the book, let me just say that, which is interesting. But sir, I think I absolutely agree with you that a military response would be a, a showed response. why do we need a response and display? It can be quiet, it can be effective, and it can be what the country actually wants in the future. It's not always that you need to create a media hype with regards to a response and stuff like that. So I think that's a very mature way of looking at it, and I think India, I'm sure the policymakers and the leaders in the armed forces are, and other agencies are of course working towards this. So eye opening. I mean, I must say that you've brought out an aspect of this which is seldom discussed in our media, because again, the which comes bring me back to the first thing I said, that we've reduced Pakistan to a joke, which to me, fair enough, even I laugh, but there's a little bit of a hint of a seriousness in that laughter as well. uh, One needs to be careful, one needs to be conscious, and one needs to be aware of this nuisance that sits on our border. I'd like to thank you for, I think, waking us up and reminding us again, as observers. I won't call myself an analyst, but as an observer of Pakistan, an observer of geopolitics around us, that we must not forget this particular threat at all. For that, I'd like to thank you, as always, sir.
Thank you very much, Adi. I think this was a very important program in terms of messaging also to our own people and to the adversaries across. I think time has come for them to realize that they have a greater stakes in their own survivability, and their survivability at the moment is an issue. And undertaking these kind of actions against your neighbor, a much bigger neighbor, a neighbor who is comparatively still very benign, is not something which is going to be very helpful to you.
Desire. Absolutely.
Thank
Absolutely,
you,
sir.
and
I think
yeah,
strong words. On that note, sir, thank you so much. Always a learning experience, and looking forward for another one. Till next time, sir. Jai Hind.